Alright, welcome back. So last time we spoke about inheritance and polymorphism and immutability versus mutability. And this time I want to drill down on immutability one more time. So we spoke about how to make a class immutable by making the class final, right, and making the attributes final, and using a constructor over setters. Okay, those are three things you need to make it immutable, right? This is option number one. Option number two is to use a static factory method, make the attributes final still, but you don't have to make the class final. Alright, which is pretty nice, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do what we want, right, which is to create a blue, green, and red point. But so we're not going to use inheritance here. Instead, we're going to create them all from the same class, all right? So we're going to go ahead and re-add our color here. So you're probably confused what this all means, and it's going to make more sense once we see it. But basically, we're not going to use, we're going to get rid of all this trash. Okay, let's get rid of all this. Okay, let's get rid of all this trash because we don't need, so basically we're not going to create a red point, blue point, and a green point class to create our points. Instead, we can do something different, right? And it's going to do it through, so we're going to make our class immutable and still be able to create green, red, and whatever, green and blue points, right? So we can still create our colors. Okay, so we're going to re-add the attribute color. Okay, we're going to re-add a constructor, but this time we're going to make it private. So let's get rid of all this trash too. Okay, so let's go back here. So now we're going to create our first static factory method. Where we're going to create a red point using this static factory method. So we say public static points create. Let's say make red point, pass in x and y, and we're going to return a point constructor, and we're going to pass in x and y and let's say red. Okay. So here's what we did. First, the static factory method has to be static. So static factory method has to be static. Makes sense, right? It's called a static factory method because you're able to create multiple instances of an object, right, that are different. So we can have, basically it's like a factory. Think of factory making toys. You have a factory making points. So you have a factory of making blue points, and you have a factory of making green points, right? So you have three different constructors now. So you have three different static factory methods in one constructor. So using the same constructor 3 times to create the static factory method, right? So you have 3 static factory methods. So you use one to create a red point, you use one to create a blue point, and you use one to create a green point, right? This is pretty cool. So in other words, we just made our class immutable because our attributes are still final, and our constructor is private. So you can't actually create a point object, right? You can't do point p equals new point using a constructor. So you can't use a constructor at all, not even one without any attributes, right? Because that's private access, right? Remember, private constructors can't be accessed outside of this class. So they are being accessed here though. So we're using this private constructor to create our static factory methods, right? So so instead of doing new point, we do new, or just without the new, because we don't use a constructor. So constructor uses new, right? New point or new whatever, new string, or whatever object you have, right? So instead of using new, we're just going to do point dot make blue point, for example, right? Because we're accessing it statically. This is a static function. So remember, static functions to be accessed, you always have to specify the class name dot function name. So the class name is point, and the function name is make blue point. Make blue point. Sorry. So in other words, these static factory methods, right? They are accessed statically. Okay. So we're gonna create 3 points here, just like before, right? So we have our red point, and we have our sorry, I'm losing it. We have our green point. Let's actually make these different values. So let's make this 10, and make this 10. Okay, and let's make this like, I don't know, 7. Oh my God, what's going on? 7 and I don't know, 3. Okay, doesn't really matter. But now they have different points and they're different colors. Okay, so we're actually going to print out the. Oh, we don't have our getters anymore, right? We deleted our getters. So we want to recreate these getters. And actually, there's a warning here saying that private field color is assigned but never accessed. Same thing for X and Y, right? They're never accessed because you can't actually access these values. How do you get the color? So you want the color of point P. You usually get a getter, right? You have to create a getter. So we create our getters, and now we can print out our values, right? So point. It's called P1 actually. So that's like consistent. P1, whatever. P2, P3. So I'm gonna say point 1. Okay. And we're going to say, so let's do 2-string. Let's do that. Actually, that's probably the easiest way of doing it, right? Instead of having to print out the getters, we can just use a 2-string. Now we can print out the values. All right. So we actually don't need getters in this case, right? Because we're not actually going to use them in this example. We're just going to use the 2-string to print them out. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's print out point 1. And then again, to use 2-string, you just do P dot 2-string. Or, oops, I did do plus. Yeah, bad. All right, so do P1 dot 2-string, or actually, let's actually try this out real quick, just to prove that I'm right. So if you do P1 dot 2-string, we'll print out this. Remember this? We talked about this before, 2-string, right? So it's the similar concept as overriding, get color. We're overriding the objects method 2-string and creating our own 2-string. So we're printing out X equals 5, Y equals 5, and color equals blue, right? So we're going to say our color, or actually, we'll do this. We'll say blue point. Oh my God, can't type today. Okay. Instead of 2-string, we just do this. So we actually don't even have to specify 2-string, because when you do P1, it's automatically going to use 2-string. It's going to say, this is the same thing as saying .2-string. So you don't have to actually specify. You don't actually have to say you're using 2-string. It does it automatically for you. So it's going to still print out X equals 5, Y equals 5, and color equals blue. It's smart enough to realize that it has to use 2-string here, right? So there you go. So we have blue point. Or actually, it already prints out point. So you just say blue. And then we can do red, and we can do green. So we have blue, red, and green. We print them all out. Okay. And we're going to get our nice colors. I'm printing out the same point, and I was like, hold on, wait a minute. What am I doing? There we go. So now print out the correct variable names. We should get our blue, red, and green points. Okay. And here we go. We get blue, red, and green, right? Blue, blue, red, red, and green, green. Okay, so now we have our 3 points that are different colors. So we just use static factory methods, which are immutable, which is what we want, and this have the ability to create different color points using static factory methods. And the cool thing is, we can actually mimic this, right, using constructors. So if, let's say you want to do it the constructor way, I'll tell you why it's not recommended, but let's say we have 3 constructors, right? Well, actually, this is a good lesson. You can't do this. I just realized you can't, because you can't have the same constructor with the same parameters. So if you're thinking about doing this, right, you're thinking about just, saying that, okay, this color equals red, okay, and this one equals blue, right? How you can distinguish each one? You can't. Because you can name the static factor methods, you can actually specify 3 different methods that create 3 different points. But with a constructor, you can't have the same constructor signature. So for example, if you have a third parameter here, right? Now it'll work because one is 2 parameters and one is 3 parameters. But in this case, we don't want 3 parameters. We want 2 parameters because we want to hard code the color. And we can't do that in constructors because it's already defined. It's saying that point int is already defined in this class. So we can only have one constructor, okay? Only one constructor with the same name. All right, so let's go ahead and undo everything here. Okay. Now I just realized, never mind, we're good. Okay, so that shows you the power of static factor methods, that they can create a immutable class using them, and you're able to have like n number of points. So you can have like, let's say n equals 10, right? You can have like 10 different points. You just have to create 10 different functions. You can have like red, blue, green, purple, black, white, gray, whatever, yellow, and so forth. So you can have as many as you want, right? So instead of having to create like, if you want to create 10 different points using inheritance, you have to create 10 subclasses. Now you have 11 classes. You still have only one class in this example, and you're using the same class, and that's immutable. That's pretty amazing to me that we can do this. A lot of people don't take advantage of the static factor methods, but they're actually very powerful because the naming convention makes it very easy to know exactly what's going on, right? You know exactly what's going on here. You're making a blue point. You don't have to specify you're making a blue point. It automatically makes it for you because you're hard coding the color blue, right? And also it's immutable, so it's thread safe, which is a very important attribute for a class to be thread safe. And again, we'll talk about that in a future lesson about multi-threading versus threading and when to use multi-threading and so forth. But the point is that immutable classes are very, very powerful because they are thread safe. All right, so next lesson, we're going to talk more about inheritance and polymorphism. So this is just a wrap up on immutability for now. There's one more way real quick before I go to make a class immutable. So there's the first way, which is make a class final and use a constructor over setters and make all the attributes final. The second way is what we just did. We made our attributes final and we used a static factory method. And the third way is to use a inner class design that is static, or not, doesn't have to be static. Actually, use an inner class design that we call a builder pattern, and I actually use this a lot in real life scenarios because the builder pattern is really clean and it's really useful because it's immutable and it's a really nice design. If we have a lot of attributes, so for example, we have 3 attributes here. If we had, for example, like 50 attributes, the builder pattern is definitely the way to go. But if you only have like 3 attributes, using a static factory method makes more sense. And even if you don't have to, like, let's say there are no colors, right? You're just making a point, right? So make point, okay? And you don't have to worry about the color, okay? Let's pretend there is no color here, okay? Then it still makes sense to me to use a static factory method because you really are making a class, simple. It's immutable, and it's straight to the point. You're making a point, right? You can still name the class that's creating that method, right? So instead of using new point, you just say make point, right? And now you have a point, right? Simple as that. But so just to reiterate the point, if you have like a small amount of attributes, like let's say up to 7 or 8 attributes, then a static factory method design makes sense. If you have more than 8, I would say use a builder pattern. And when I say 8 or less than 8, that's just an example I think that's like a good number around there. It doesn't have to be exactly 8. Like for example, if you decide to make a builder pattern with 6 attributes, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you make it with only 2 attributes, then it doesn't make sense. So there has to be like a threshold you have to set yourself to know when to make a builder pattern over a static factory pattern. Now, we haven't talked about how to make a builder pattern yet, and we will in a future course, but that's going to be down the line. I want to get back to talking about inheritance and polymorphism, which we'll be talking about next lecture. So see you there.